fun hydration game. Drink water every time I use the words dragon, objective, map, pressure, or control when describing a champion's strengths. Pull out a gallon of water onto the desk. Best of luck. Hello Summoners, welcome to another ProGuides video. My name is Dan, and today we'll be discussing the 3 best champions to main in every role on patch 10.5. Picking a good champion to main isn't about what's flavor of the month, it's about consistency. While it's good to play the OP picks while they're OP, they won't last forever, so you should always have a high win rate, low pick rate, low ban rate champion you're familiar with. Really quick though, before we jump into it, today's question of the day is, what made you choose your first main? I take an inordinate amount of joy in ruining other people's fun, so Thresh's ability to foil enemy plans was very attractive to me, and he's been my favorite support ever since. Let us know all your answers in the comments below, and also before we get started, make sure to check out ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements in your rank. There, we have challenger coaches available 24/7 who will help you climb the ladder this season. Also, if you're not already subscribed here to our YouTube channel, make sure you do that so you can rightfully comment first and stay in the loop about whatever knowledge we're dropping. Don't miss out. Alright, let's jump right into the video. Appropriately leading the charge into our list is Kled. Kled is very rarely a premier top laner, but he's almost always sleeper status. Just the right kind of strong to go undetected. With the game's meta more focused on the bottom half of the map than ever, Kled's ability to venture out of top lane and impact the other lanes with his ult is a pretty phenomenal tool to have at your disposal. Kled functions insanely well with Conqueror, so when you're playing him, get into the fight and stay in the fight. You have some of the best flanking potential in the game, so use that to your advantage. One special note where Kled's build is concerned. He's one of those champions that likes to rush Tiamat for the early wave clear, then proceed with his build and finish his Hydra later. So keep that in mind when you're checking out the build. All in all, Kled is a really well-rounded champion with a good lane phase and an even better mid-game, so he's worth your time and dedication. Plus, he can be flexed into the mid lane in certain matchups for maximum roamability. Our next top laner for patch 10.5 is Maokai. If you ever watched the Lorax and thought to yourself, I too wish to speak for the trees, then this is the champion for you. Maokai has been AWOL for a long time now, but ironically, the buffs to that fire-based burning type item Bami's Cinder have been kind to him, and he's seeing a resurgence. Maokai is about as tanky as they come, and he offers gratuitous quantities of lockdown and peel. With the meta shifting its way back to tankier comps, teamfight-centric gameplay is becoming more prevalent, and Maokai is taking root just fine with his kit. He can use his ult to engage or disengage as he sees fit. His saplings give him good zone control over neutral objectives, and if you're really good on him, you can time his W's untargetability to dodge important enemy abilities to keep yourself healthy. Every successful TP play you make is invaluable to your team, so we encourage branching out from top. If you're really lucky, the enemy team will get so frustrated with trying to kill you that they just leave the game. Top lane pick number 3 is good old Malphite. Ever the rock-solid top laner, he too is low-key prospering under the Bami's Cinder buffs. Malphite's Q-poke serves as some easy but formidable harass in lane, and his passive shield with the attack speed slow on his E give him some nice cushy trades. These abilities make your lane bearable, but team fights are where you shine, so use your W and E to push a wave out and try to make plays elsewhere on the map. As we said, this meta revolves a lot around the bottom half of the map and their dragon control, so if you think you can do something to create a lead for your team, go for it. Your ult is one of the best engaged playmaking abilities in the game, so look for ways to take enemies out of the fight and score your team some free objectives. Malphite is an especially valuable pick into team comps that don't have a big source of AP damage, since his abilities scale with his armor stacking. Also, he gets bigger with more armor, so that's pretty neat. Regardless of enemy comp though, roam like a rolling stone and shake the foundations of their backline. Now onto the jungle. Our first jungle pick is Trundle. With the reappearance of tanks also comes the reappearance for a need to take them down, and Trundle's stat-stealing ult makes him great for abusing the tanks of League. Aside from his ult's usefulness though, Trundle is a great early game skirmisher with a pretty healthy clear, so you're free to mix up your approach to each game and focus on ganking or counter jungling as you see fit. Trundle's primary weakness is that he doesn't have a gap closer, but with the current state of Nimbus Cloak's synergy with Smite, he has a much easier time hobbling after people to club them into submission. Utilize Trundle to borrow some defensive stats from the enemy tank, then stroll on up to their carries and beat them down. I know, it's complicated, but I believe in your ability to figure it out. By the way, the difference between Troll Chiefs and Troll Kings is how well you can use Trundle's Pillar. Try knocking enemies out of their movement abilities with the Pillar Bump, or interrupting channeled abilities like Fiddle Ult or Rift Herald Summon. It feels amazing. None of you will be surprised to hear Nunu on yet another one of our lists, and that's because the boy and his Yeti have continued their adventure as heroes of the jungle tier lists. Somehow though, people aren't abusing it. Ever since Elemental Drakes were introduced, I've told you about the importance of dragon control roughly 10 or 11,000 times, and unfortunately for our comrades in the top lane, that hasn't changed. You know what helps you dominate objectives though? A quick little nibble of true damage to the tune of almost 1,000 damage stacked with your actual smite. Sounds pretty good, right? If that isn't enough for you, Nunu is a great tank for your team, has ridiculous early ganking and diving potential, and provides the healthiest clear on the Rift. Just play Nunu. He's almost as well-rounded as his gargantuan snowballs. Jungle pick number 3 is gonna be Warwick, yet another champion that rarely goes far out of style. Warwick's sustain and early dueling ability makes him a force to be reckoned with in almost any meta. However, with the state of the jungle being so vulnerable to stealing camps, Warwick's map presence is exceptionally treasured. Fighting Warwick early is a dangerous endeavor, but losing even 1 or 2 camps early on can set you behind for the rest of the game. So it's a hard decision to make between getting mauled by League's most rabid pupper or throwing him a bone so he doesn't eat your limbs instead. Force this situation enough times and you'll set the enemy jungler so far behind it's basically a 5v4, and you'll be free to ult lunge at some carries to your heart's content. Don't listen to their screams, Warwick. The enemy's vital organs are tennis balls, and you're doing such a good job! Aside from being a terror in his enemy's jungle, Warwick's sustain also lets him solo dragon with ease, and sometimes sneak plays like that can make all the difference. Our first pick in the mid lane is Nocturne. This may strike a lot of you as an unusual pick, but Nocturne mid is actually seeing a lot of success right now. Map presence is king, and Nocturne has that in spades. Just use your Q to clear your wave alongside your Tiamat, then look for a place somewhere else on the map. Maybe bot lane is overextended, maybe top lane is looking diveable, or maybe your jungler didn't learn their lesson the first 2 times they got murdered and they are once again asking for your shadowy support. Whatever the case, snowball your lanes and yourself as much as you can, and think about which enemy ability you need to spell shield the most, since that can make or break a play. Oh, and once again regarding the items, Nocturne is like Kled in the way that he wants to just buy the Tiamat for wave clear and then proceed into the rest of his build before he completes Hydra. The early wave clear is essential to the Nocturne mid playstyle, but the rest of the stats aren't. Your sole purpose in life is to clear waves, roam, and cast darkness. That way the enemy team doesn't get any bright ideas about being useful or getting to play the game or leaving them alone for a second. Remember friends, darkness is ideal, but it doesn't last forever, and gray screen is the next best thing. Coming in at pick number 2 for mid lane is Malzahar. Map pressure is the name of the game, and no one mindlessly clears waves quite like Malzahar. Just say the name of this champion to your closest mid laner and watch them cringe. Nobody likes dealing with this thing. It's quite possibly the most anti-fun champion in the game. Attach E to a minion, summon voidlings, maybe throw in a Q to refresh your E's duration, and cut the wave a bit. Poof, no more wave. Now you're free to roam to your heart's content. In combat, and stay with me on this, in combat, should you find yourself in a team fight, you're going to, wait for it, dump all your abilities on the nearest high-value target and press R. That's it. After that, they're probably dead. And if they're not, it's because they bought a QSS, aka the Malzahar tax, and they limped away. It's simple but effective, and if you thrive on people whining about your champion, you'll just love Malzahar. Alright, wrapping up our mid laners is Ahri. Once again, map pressure, mobility, playmaking, all the keys to success in patch 10.5. Ahri is another champion who's good at wiping out a wave and roaming the map. She doesn't do it as fast or as effortlessly as Malzahar, but she has a bit more kill pressure in lane, and once she has 6, she becomes much more difficult to gank or lock down. In the mid and late game, her ranged charm lets her make picks that can win fights before they even happen. Speaking of making picks, the popular build right now with Ahri is to rush Hextech GLP, Boots, then Twin Shadows. When combined with Glacial Augment and Ingenious Hunter, Ahri becomes the most irritating and obnoxious engage machine on the planet. It doesn't do quite as much damage as a normal build, but the trade-off is worth it since it enables your team. There's a lot of room for creativity with how you approach a fight as Ahri, so look for flanks with her ult if you can, but save your last charge to use as an escape unless it's going to kill. Now then, first off for the ADCs is Jinx. Patch 10.5 is looking pretty teamfighty, and Jinx loves herself some teamfights. With a solid frontline, Jinx can tear a game wide open. Her scaling is insane, and her lane poke is nothing to sneeze at either. She won't offer quite as much early pressure as other ADCs, but as long as you're going even and keeping your CS up, it won't matter. Once you hit 3 items, you pop off, and only a team of divers and assassins has a hope of stopping you. That said, your ability to peel for yourself with chompers and zap isn't too bad, and they also function as zone control when you're squaring up around objectives. Just make sure you're keeping track of your passive. A minimum attack speed Rocketeer Jinx is a sad Jinx, so switch it up accordingly. By far, though, her most enjoyable quality is her ability to snipe people with her ult. If anyone's ever BMing you in all chat, just tell them they're talking a lot of trash for someone within super mega death rocket distance, or the SMD rocket if you prefer. Riot named it, not us. Pick number 2 in the bot lane is Ashe. Ashe is one of the most vastly underrated champions in League of Legends, and every ADC should have her in their pocket. She's not a flashy champion with an overloaded balancing nightmare of a kit like perhaps Kai'Sa, Senna, Phelios, and Kalista, but she's got so much utility. Her global ult makes her the highest engaged potential of any ADC. Her lane poke is enough to keep her in a favorable spot for trades with most other bot lanes, and most importantly, her hawkshot can help you track enemy movements. Can't stress this enough. Learn to use Hawkshot to track the enemy jungler. If you can keep an eye on them, they're worthless as long as your team pays attention. That's a big asterisk, I know, but when you're playing utility, relying on hope and trust is part of the package. As a rule of thumb for the uninitiated, Hawkshot buffs around 5 seconds after they spawn, and do the same for Scuttle. Far from a perfect system, but it's a decent starting point. The more you can think like a jungler, the better you'll be at Ashe. Unfortunately for Jhin, he's pick number 3 for the bot lane. Almost, buddy. Maybe next time we'll do 4 picks. Anyway, enough foreplay. Jhin is very well suited for the current state of the game. He's a very well-rounded pick, capable of high damage through his 4th shot executes, and utility through his traps and long-ranged root. CSing around Jin's 4-bullet mechanic takes some practice, but it's worth the time you put in. He's consistently a solid pick, and he's very satisfying to play. When you hit people with that fat 4th shot, it resonates in your soul, especially if it's the 4th shot of your ult and you hit them just right when they're about to get out and they have that twinkle of hope in their eye. Heavenly. Finally, we're into the supports, and Nami generates about as much water as we've been drinking during the video. Nami is an all-arounder support who does a little bit of everything. She has great trades since her W can damage enemies and heal herself or her allies, and even if her bubble stun is hard to land, it's still an AoE CC, which is a pretty big deal. Besides, using the slow on her E makes landing the bubble a million times easier, and following up on it usually ends up in at least a summoner spell or 2 being blown. Her dominance in lane phase is what makes her so terrifying, and it would be okay if she actually fell off in the late game, but thanks to her ult being a long-ranged, lane-wide knock-up, she really doesn't fall off ever. More importantly, Riot almost never tries to flop around and change her numbers. Janna is pick number 2 for the support category, and if you know what you're doing, she's one of the most frustrating supports in the game to play against. She's basically a levitating nah button. Damage her carry? Nah, shielded. Approach her carry? Nah, get knocked up. Somehow cheating the system and getting within 5 feet of her carry? Nah, peasant, she's ulting you away. By the time the enemy has gone through this process and realized their mistake, it's too late. They're running away, but Janna's slowed them now, and her team is probably about to play jump rope with your spinal cord. The mistake most Jannas make is thinking that she's just an enchanter all game, but the difference between high elo Jannas and low elo Janna wannabes is that a good Janna knows that she's the world's most aggressive poke mage in laning phase. Shield yourself and harass the ADC every time they step up for CS. See how long they choose to go for those minions. Easy breezy. Is it time? Oh my god, yes, it's time. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Bard. After almost 5 years exactly, Riot just now gave Bard his first ever nerf. I'll tell you up front, Bard is a difficult champion, but good Bards are so challenging to deal with, and since his success is based on his macro, he's almost always in a decent spot. So, keeping it short and simple, Bard is a weird champion. He's a pretty strong laner because of his high base damage and his low cooldown stun, but he does his best when he's allowed to use his out-of-combat movement speed and tunnels to roam and affect other lanes. Basically, you have to learn when it's okay to leave your ADC alone so you can make plays elsewhere. Generally speaking, clear the wave with them, then you can roam until the next wave is about to touch. Just make sure they're not getting zoned off from CS unless you're definitely getting a kill. The other tricky part about Bard is learning the fine art of using an AoE Zhonya's without making your team resent your birth. If you're scared of angering your team, just reserve your ult for making picks or catching people. Otherwise, just ask yourself who would be the most irritated by being held still for a few seconds and aim accordingly. But the real nuance of Bard is the fact that he is actually two champions. Bard is the normal version of the champion you see walking around the Rift with build number 1, focused on nothing but pure helpful utility and being useful to his team. Disclaimer, that's the superior build and you should use it. Take this next section with a grain of salt. But Bard's second form is called Brad, Bard's Chad twin brother who goes with build number 2 and just slaps anyone and everyone he encounters. Mo chimes, mo problems, baby. Take advantage of that base damage and those scalings to show your carries how it's done. I recommend going Sheen, Mobies, and Hextech Revolver for the cheap early spike and burst damage, then build your rapid fire and go back to complete your Iceborne and Gunblade. If you want meeps, then bring the Ruckus. Ute Clan ain't nothing to fuck with! That's going to conclude this episode of OP Pick or Ban. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't already, make sure to check out ProGuides.com as well as our YouTube channel for informational content aimed at taking your game to the next level. Drop a like or comment and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with our content as well. Until next time, best of luck on the Rift, Summoners.